everyone. So today we are going to see how to create an EC2 instance for Linux machine in AWS account. First of all, we will do it from AWS Management Console, from graphical user interface, and then we will try to do the same thing from terminal. All right. So without further ado, let's start. First thing first, make sure you logged into your AWS account and then go to the EC2 service page, and you will be redirected to the EC2 dashboard shortly. All right. So from left navigation bar, you can see there is something called instances. So click on here, and then you will move into the list of instances that have been created for your account. So right now, I don't have any EC2 instance created for this region. So what I'm going to do, I will press launch instances, and then I will start creating instance for this region. All right. So first of all, I will try to give a name to my instance. Let's say I will use this instance for deploying a web server. So I will give a name to this instance. Let's say it's called web server, right? Then you will choose the AMI. AWS provides a bunch of AMI that you can choose from. There is Amazon Linux, there is Ubuntu, Windows, and many flavors of Linux distribution. All right. But for this demo, I will choose Ubuntu. All right. I will leave everything as it is. Then the main thing is I will choose an instance type. So basically, what instance type we'll choose will have direct impact on your cost at the end of the month. So try to choose the instance that is relevant to your project, that is relevant to your workload. All right. So this is a very demo session. So I'm not going to choose a very large instance type. I will choose a very basic instance type, which could be T2 medium, right? It has 2 vCPU and it has 4 GB RAM. All right. Then the most important thing, we have to create, or we have to assign a key pair for this instance that we are going to build. The question is, what is key pair and why we need that? So basically, we need a key pair to access into the virtual machines, right? If you don't assign a key pair into a virtual machine, then it will not be possible for you to access into the machine. So you need to create a key pair, and that key pair will be assigned into the virtual machines, and also the key will be downloaded in your local machine. Make sure this is securely placed somewhere in your machine. If that key has been compromised, then your virtual machine might be compromised as well. So make sure you put your key pair in a secure place. All right. So right now I don't have any key pair. So I will create a new key pair. So I am giving a name to my key pair. I'm calling it my Linux box, right? That's the name of my key pair. And as soon as I press create key pair, the key pair will be downloaded in my local machine. You can see it here. All right. So I will get back to that later on. I just leave it as it is. So the key pair has been created and it has been assigned to the Linux machine that I'm going to build. All right. Then the network settings. Let's click on edit. So you can choose the VPC where you want to deploy your EC2 instance. Right now, I have only one VPC, which is default one. I'm just using the default VPC, but for production grade application, it's always recommended not to use the default VPC. Create a new VPC from scratch based on your requirements. And then you have to choose the subnet. So whenever you create an EC2 instance, you have to deploy the instance in a specific subnet in a specific availability zone. All right. So if you don't specify that subnet, the system will automatically assign a random subnet for your instance. So let's choose the subnet that I want. So let's say I want to deploy the instance into US East 1A. So I select the subnet. All right. Then you can specify, do you want public IP to be associated with the instance or not? All right. Because we're going to use a machine for a web server, and I want people to browse the web page from outside. So I want public IP address to be associated with the instance. So we have to make sure this is enabled. All right. Then this is another thing called firewall or security groups. So you can create a security group from scratch, or you can use the existing one. All right. So what is security group? So basically, security group is used to add an extra layer of protections for your servers, so that we can define who can access your machine on which port and from where. All right. So it's very important to have a security group for your virtual machines. It's not an optional thing. You have to specify a security group for your machine. So I'm going to create a security group from scratch. So I will leave the security group name as it is. And then the main thing is I have to define the inbound rule. All right. So I want to specify which port I want to be open for home. Yeah. So basically, I want two ports to be open. First of all, I want to access into the server from my local machine, so that I want port 22 is open. So port 22 is used for SSH access. So I want to make sure this port is open, but at the same time, I don't want this port to be open for anyone. I just want this port to be open for my IP. So I will choose my IP. And you can see it will dynamically get IP address of my machine. All right. I need to add another rule, which is HTTP rule. I can select HTTP from here. So why we need HTTP port to be open? Because we want anyone from internet to access our web servers. So web servers will be deployed into our machines, and the web server will be running on port 80. All right, so we want this port to be open as well. So these are the two ports I want to be open. So let me tell you one thing. Security group is something called stateless. So what do I mean by stateless? If we allow anything to access our machine, that inbound traffic will be automatically allowed for outbound traffic. So most of the time, we will just specify the inbound rule or outbound rule. All right, we don't need to specify both, because if one is allowed, the other one will be automatically allowed, right? All right, then what we have in advanced networking, I'll leave them as it is. I don't need to change anything here. And then optionally, you can specify the storage amount you want for your instance. I'm choosing 8 GB. I believe 8 GB is the lowest one. So you have to choose any amount from 8 GB up to whatever. All right. Then you can specify whether you want this volume to be terminated whenever the instance get terminated, because this EBS volume is attached to the instance, and you can specify whenever someone delete the instance, do we want this EBS volumes to be deleted or not? All right. Also, you can encrypt this EBS volume. I leave it as no, but for production grade application, it's always recommended that you always have encryption enabled. All right. That's all. If you want, you can add additional volume as well if needed. I just don't need it. And then we have advanced details here. I will leave everything as it is. I don't want to make any kind of modifications here, but I will do one more thing. And that is, you can see there's something called instance profile. IAM instance profile. So what is IAM instance profile? So basically, whenever we deploy any application into a server, sometimes that application might need to access into other AWS services like S3 buckets. All right, you can hardcode the access key or secret access key within the application, but it's not recommended. The recommended option is you can create an instance profile or IAM role and assign that IAM role into these machines. Therefore, whatever permission that role has, the application running on this machine will automatically get those permissions, right? So right now, I don't have any kind of permissions or roles created. So let's create a role, IAM role. All right, and then we will attach that role into the machine. Here we will just create a role and we will assign that role to the instance. So let's create a role first. Let's click on create role button, and then you have few options. Choose AWS services, and then choose the use cases, which is EC2. That means the role we are going to create, it will be used for EC2 instance. All right, then I will go to the next page. In this page, you can define what permissions EC2 instance should have. You can create your own policy, but you can also use AWS managed policy. For simplicity, I will use AWS managed policy. For example, I want S3 full access permission to be added into this role. So I select Amazon S3 full access, right? And then I will go to next page. I can give a name to my role. Let's say it's called EC2 role, right? That's all I have. And there's something called trusted entities. That means this role can only assume by EC2 instance. And that's how we can define trusted entities. That's all. And then once everything is done, I will just create the role. The role will be created shortly. Just wait for a few seconds and let's see what is happening. All right. So I can see the role has been created, right? So I will go back to my EC2 instance creation page. And here, what I will do, I will refresh this one and we can see I have the EC2 role here, which we just created. So I created a role and then I assigned that role to this instance. And therefore, whatever application has been deployed into this machine, they will automatically assume this role. All right. So that's all I want to tell you at this moment. And then if everything looks good, I will click on launch instance. So the instance will be created shortly. Just wait for a couple of minutes. Wow, it's really quick. It took less than 1 minute. So let's go to the instance page. All right, let's refresh this page and you can see the instance name is here. That means we have successfully created the instance, but wait for a few seconds because we can see the instance is still in pending state, but now it became in running state. All right, so let's refresh the page again. So you can see the status check is still in initializing state. All right, so we can see we have all the status checks passed and we have the instance in running state. All right, so we have successfully created the instance and the instance is in running state. Now, what we're going to do, we will access into the machine and we will try to install a web server called Apache, right? So let's try to access into the machine. Can you remember we downloaded the private key for the instance? So I will use that private key to access our machine. But before that, what I'm going to do, I will change the permission of that private key because it was recommended by AWS to have 400 permission. So I will apply change mode permission command to that private key, which was called my linuxbox.pm, right? So I changed the permission. Now I will use this private key to access into the virtual machine. So now what I'm going to do, I will try to access into this machine with this private key. So if I go back to the management console and if I click on the connect button and from SSH client tab, the command that we can use to access the server is already given. So I will just copy and paste the command into my terminal, right? I will paste it here and I will press enter. So it will ask for confirmation. I will type yes. Then I will get access into the machine shortly. You can see, I can see my machine here. So this is the machine I just created and I just logged into. And now what I'm going to do, I will deploy a web server into this machine and the web server is called Apache. But before I install Apache, I need to update the packages within this machine. All right, it will take a couple of minutes, so wait for a few minutes. So I have updated package repositories. So now what I will do, I will deploy a web server into this machine. So I'm going to install the web server called Apache with sudo, then apt get install command, which is for Ubuntu package manager. And then I will specify the name of the package, which is called Apache 2, right? So I have to just confirm the installation and press enter and the web server will be installed shortly. So the web server has been created. And now what I'm going to do, I will just make sure the web server is up and running with systemctl start Apache command. All right. So the Apache server or web server has been started. I can check it with systemctl status command. Right? I can see the web server is up and running from here. And also I need to make sure if the virtual machine gets rebooted or restarted, we have to make sure web server gets started automatically. And to do that, we need to apply another command, which is called systemctl enable Apache. So that means whenever we restart the machine, Apache or web server will be started automatically. All right. So this is the three things we need to do. And then if I do call command with localhost, and if I press enter, I can see something here. So this is the default web pages served by Apache. So I can see Apache has been successfully installed and started. Right now, let's verify the same thing from the browser so that we can verify anyone from internet can access the web page. So I will go to the web. So I will go to the browser, and then I will open a new tab. And what I will do, I will get the public IP address of the instance from here, and then I will paste it here. All right. If I press enter, I can see the default pages that is served by Apache. So that means we have successfully created an instance, and we have successfully installed a web server into that machine. All right. So I want to tell you something. For every EC2 instance, there is something called metadata. So what is metadata? So metadata means data about EC2 instance. So every EC2 instance has some data associated with the instance, and we can verify those details with metadata. And the thing is, you can access those metadata whenever you are within the machine. You cannot access those metadata from outside of the machine. So right now I'm in the machine. So what I'm going to do, I will type curl command, and the IP address that you need to access the metadata is 169.254.169.254. All right, and then you have to add /latest and then add /metadata, right? So if you press enter, you can see all the relevant information that is associated with the instance, right? So for example, I want to know what is the AMI ID associated with this instance. So what I'm going to do, I will just add /AMI/ID, and if I press enter, I can see the AMI ID which is associated with the virtual machine. Similarly, I can check what is the public IP address associated with this machine. So what I'm going to do, I will add /public-IPv4, right? If I press enter, I can see the public IP address associated with this instance, right? So there are so many things I can verify. I can verify what is the name of the host. I can verify what are the metrics available to this instance. I can see so many other things. I can see security groups. All right. So with the help of metadata, we can easily verify relevant informations for that EC2 instance, right? So that's all about it. But before I finish this video, I would also like to show you how to create an instance from terminal rather than this graphical user interface. And to do that, what I'm going to do in the terminal, I will type AWS followed by EC2, then I will type run instances, and then I have to specify the AMI ID which will be associated with this instance, right? The question is, from where can I get the AMI ID? To do that, what I will do, I will go back to the browser, and from the browser, make sure you are in EC2 dashboard, and here somewhere you can see there's something called AMI catalog. So I will press AMI catalog, and then you will be redirected to the catalog pages. From here, you can find your relevant AMI. All right. So in this case, I will install Ubuntu on the machine. So I will search Ubuntu AMI. You can see there are many Ubuntu AMI that we can use. For this demo, I will use the first one. So I will copy the AMI ID, and then I will go back to my terminal and I will paste it here. All right. So I have just specified what AMI ID I need for creating this instance. All right. Then optionally, I can specify how many instances I want to be created. By default, if we don't specify this count parameter, it will be 1. But if we want, we can install more than one EC2 instance at the same time. So for example, in this case, I want, let's say, 2 instances to be created. All right. Then what I want to specify what instance type I want to use for this instance. So I would type instance type, which will be T2 micro in this case. And then I can specify the key pair associated with this instance, which will be my Linux box that I have created already. All right, so I can also specify the security groups for this instance. I can specify more than one security groups if we want. And to get the security group IDs, I will go back to my browser, and then I will be in EC2 dashboard, and in somewhere I can see security groups. And in security groups, I can see right now I have 2 security groups created. As I said before, we can assign more than one security groups to the instance, but for now I will just choose one. So I will copy the security group ID that I want for my instance, and then I will paste it here. All right. And then I also need to specify the subnet ID where we will deploy our instances. So I will specify the subnet ID, and again, I will go back to my browser, and I will go back to VPC service, and you will be redirected to VPC dashboard shortly. And then from left navigation bar, you can choose subnets. So these are the subnets that has that. So these are the subnets that have already been created. This all belong to default VPC, and in default VPC, all of the subnets are public subnets. I can choose any of them for now. So I will choose the first one. I copy the subnet ID and I will paste it here. So as soon as I press enter, I can see a response has been returned. That means the instance might have been created successfully. So that's how we can create instance from terminal as well. You might think initially that, well, I can use graphical user interface to create instance. It sounds better for me. But the problem is, let's say you create an instance now, but you want to replicate the same instance again. So you have forgotten what are the configurations you have whenever you create the first instance. So whenever you try to create another replica of that instance, it might be difficult for you to replicate everything, because we are human, we can make mistakes. If I try to create the instance from user interface, we might make mistakes. So the better option is using CLI, right? To avoid any kind of unnecessary repetitive work. So that's all I want to show you for today. Thank you.